Hey guys, Bigrat310 here again with his thoughts on the RF shoot interview with Mr. Kennedy. I think the only people who knew about this was cdude9590 and AJordan34. I don't think anybody else knew I was watching this. I do when I do my math homework because my math homework is very easy, but it takes me a long time to do it. And, usually I just pop up the interview and I start listening to it. And I've been listening to this one for a few days now, and it's very, very good, I must say. Well, let's get to it. The RF shoot with Mr. Kennedy. Now, I know a lot of people want to hear his thoughts on certain things. Basically, the guy did not like wrestling as a kid. I'm not gonna give the biography of what happened because then you won't see it, and I really think you should check this interview out. He talks about, what happened as a kid, how he really did not like wrestling. He liked it when he was really young, but when he got older, you were considered a nerd for watching wrestling in your school. And he openly admits it. I wanted to drink beer. I wanted to smoke pot. I wanted to do all this. And, that was more important to me than wrestling. It was more important doing that with my friends than wrestling. And I didn't want to, talk about wrestling. I didn't want to get embarrassed. And then, he went to his friend's house. And his friend asked him, hey, we're going to watch some wrestling. And he says, no. I really like how open he was about that. No, I don't want to see a bunch of guys rolling around in the ring. It's just not my thing. And I'm like, come on, give it a shot. There's some guy here that you'll really like. And Kennedy said he hated the entire show, and the one guy who he really liked was Stone Cold Steve Austin, who in my opinion is his main inspiration for getting into the wrestling business, which is true. That's just about the story. He liked it. He liked having wrestling parties, and then eventually, all his life he wanted to be an entertainer. He got into college, and he wanted to entertain, so you say, the fans. The people. He went to college first semester for acting. But he thought the theater people were a bunch of obnoxious, pretentious. So he didn't like it too much. He didn't like the aspect of being with them. So he got out of it. He got out of college because of that. He's not really sure if that's a regret yet, because it's not really been faced with him with the difficulty of a handicap of not ever graduating from college. And then, he talks about how wrestling, he always wanted to entertain people. He loves this newfound thing on wrestling. Maybe he should give it a shot. And don't say he didn't have passion, because he did. He paid his dues, worked hard every day. He talks about his OVW days, then, being called to WWE. How the whole Mr. You guys might miss that. He barely touched upon that, actually. It's basically that when he was in high school, he would do that for all the games. And he just did it in OVW one time to give it a shot, and it worked. And the crowd loved it. And he stayed with it. And that's how the whole thing came about. Like, he literally spent a good 10 seconds talking about it. I thought it would be a lot more, so that's such a big part of his character. He was talking about WWE, certain thoughts that he had on JBL. And, he even says one of his favorite workers of all time was Batista. Shocked me. And he said, it's almost amazing how every time people ask me that question, I forget to mention his name. And I'm like, I think I know why. But he still said, with Batista, he's never had more fun with anyone in the ring. Never been able to do more. He says he worked with Batista probably more than any other worker. Person who he had some of the best chemistry with was Matt Hardy. Interesting story that I learned from this. The whole thing with Matt Hardy and MVP feuding, with the basketball, the chest, that was supposed to be Hardy and Kennedy until Kennedy had one of his many injuries. Him and Hardy were really close. He was really close with Benoit at the start, but then when Eddie died, he gave Benoit his space. Benoit went off with Rey Mysterio and Chavo, people who would understand, people who were Eddie's best friends. And, Kennedy just backed off, and that's when Kennedy met Matt Hardy, and that's when they became really good friends. He tells a very good story about Mexico and how JBL did a thing with the Mexican flag as a joke, and Eddie Guerrero got pissed, saying, hey, you do that in America, but down here, you can get killed for doing something like that. Don't mess with the flag, ever again. And Kennedy's like, whoa, I'm sorry. And now, people want to know about the controversial stuff in the interview. C-Dude always told me, whenever I told C-Dude or Chase, I gotta go see the Kennedy shoot, he would always say, okay, everyone hated him. Okay, go see this video where everyone hated him. And I'm like, I don't think that many people hate him. I mean, I knew a handful. It turns out I was right. On Smackdown, Undertaker was really impressed with the stuff with Batista, and then he got to the program with The Undertaker. Oh, wait, that's why. His thing with Matt Hardy, that program didn't stop because he was injured. That program stopped because Mark Henry got injured, and he had a little thing with Batista at the Great American Bash 2006, and Matt Hardy met MVP a year later, and then they put that into the feud. But originally, Kennedy was supposed to be with Matt Hardy. I messed it up. Undertaker saw that program he had with Batista, liked it, wanted to work with him. He did. Kennedy always says, this was one of his main points for people saying that he's not safe in the ring. The Undertaker let him pile drive. The Undertaker let Kennedy pile drive him. And I personally know this. But I don't know who the two people are. I think one of them is Shawn Michaels. I know that for sure. I forget the other one. It could be Kane if you count Tombstone pile driving. When Kennedy said Undertaker has only let two people in his entire career pile drive him, and he let me do it to him. Does that prove that I'm an unsafe worker? And he can't be wrong. He said the politics on SmackDown were nothing. He said he loved SmackDown. Like guys like Undertaker and Chris Benoit. Or guys like were at the forefront, the leaders. They watched over the young kids, as Kennedy called them, and they always helped them out. And he made an excellent analogy. On SmackDown, you have The Undertaker on his mountain, who's throwing the rope down, saying, come up here, help with me. We'll make some money together. We'll be very good together. We're a family. And that's exactly how Undertaker was. And on Raw, he never sent Triple H. He never sent Cena. He just said on Raw, or on the other mountains, not just besides SmackDown, but Undertaker and Benoit in general, but every other guy was throwing boulders down the mountain saying, don't come up here, this belongs to me. I want the money. This is my spot. Which is a great analogy in my opinion. And you know, how the whole thing with Edge, oh my god, I felt so bad for the guy when I heard that. How they misdiagnosed him, and he wasn't supposed to be out for 8 months, he was only supposed to be out for like a month. But they misdiagnosed him. I think they said that his tendon was torn off the bone completely when it really wasn't. Just the tissue connecting it was torn, but the whole tendon itself wasn't torn off the bone. And because of that, you know, they first told him that, they said you have to drop it to Edge. And, you know, his thought was like, well, I have the briefcase for a year. After I'm gone for 8 months, can't I just cash it in then? For some reason, they thought, because they had to take the belt, they wanted to give the belt to Undertaker for a long time. Undertaker got the injury. And they needed to take the belt off Undertaker, like right now. And they didn't want to give it to Batista. The whole point of whoever took the belt off Undertaker was that guy was supposed to feud with Batista for 4 months. Batista was supposed to be the focal point of the whole thing. And maybe if Batista's stock went down, like if the people lost interest in him and stuff, then they would give it back to Batista. But in reality, you know, Batista chasing the title, you know, going after it, that actually rose his stock and rose his interest. So most likely, you know, you feud for Batista for 4 months, and then you'd probably keep on going. And, you know, because of Taker's injury, they had to give it to Edge. And, I mean, they didn't want to give it, like I said, they didn't want to give it to Batista. And I don't think they trusted the Great Khali enough. So they literally had no one on SmackDown. They had no one to give the belt to. Even though you could have brought Mark Henry back and probably given it to Henry. I wouldn't have had a problem with that, but... Let's see, who was on the main event of SmackDown at the time? I think Chris Benoit. Oh, shit. Never mind. That would have failed. But they could have given it to Chris Benoit because that was before the incident. But for some reason, they just didn't do it. They said apparently they needed someone from Raw. And they think, to their mind, their only reason to give the person from Raw and beat The Undertaker was Money in the Bank. When I disagree, you could have found some way, man. This is Kennedy's only shot. And, you know, Kennedy also said... Like I said, man, I'm going to only be gone for 8 months. When I'm back, you know, I get my briefcase. I still have it. Please, do not take this away from me. He didn't say that because he made a comment to Vince. When Vince told him, I'm going to give you the title, he said, look, as long as the crowd's booing when they're booing and they're chanting when they're chanting, I'm fine. And he said he thought that was a mistake because he thought Vince wants you to think that you want it. That if you don't fight it, that you don't care. And that's what he said at the end. That, you know, Stephanie probably thought that I didn't care. And, you know, and Kennedy was thinking at the time, you know, like I said before, I have the briefcase for a year. After I come back, can I just use it then? Could there be another way? And he didn't speak up. And because he told Vince, you know, like I said, hey, as long as they're booing when they're booing and chanting when they're chanting, I don't care. I'll take the job to anyone. I'm fine with it. You know, when he said that, you know, yeah, you know, Vince is like, Vince thought that, hey, maybe he doesn't care that much. It's not a great excuse. Now, this whole thing on the Denver debacle, I'm not going to give away too much. You basically know the whole story. He says that he doesn't think he hurt Randy. He says he swears to his life it was accidental. And that's what his main case, that John Cena, when he was wrestling The Undertaker, he wouldn't, like, just take the bumps. He would, like, fidget around trying to fight it, because that's what happens in a real fight. You try to fight it. And Undertaker loved that, but Undertaker told him, that's going to kill you one day. And he said John Cena hated it. Shawn Michaels hated it. And, his feud with John Cena is apparently the injury thing, how people think he was unsafe. I've seen the video. I think he kind of jumped the wrong way. But he says, hey, how can I jump and hurt his shoulder? I'm sorry, it was a freak accident. And it kind of was, but at the same time, I think he deserves a little blame for it. And, John Cena apparently hated him. Shawn Michaels did not like him. Like a lot of people. I don't think he was unsafe as everyone says. Like I told you about the whole Undertaker thing from the start. And, the whole thing with Bob Holly, I don't even know the full story on that. For the steroid thing, it's true his body did have really low amounts of testosterone that after he'd been taking it for so long that he needed it for health purposes, not for cosmetic purposes. And he says that the doctor got the prescription from the website. That's a little iffy for me. That's like, what? I mean, I'm always on the defensive side, but that's just a bit much. It's a very good shooting interview, a lot more to it that you should learn. I'm Bigrat310.